So it's sort of Gaslight meets Thelma and Louise meets Strangers on a Train, but not maybe in the way you would predict.
Welcome to our latest Book Reporter Talks to interview, where our guest today is Phillippi Ryan, and we are going to be talking about her latest thriller, her 15th novel, The House Guest, which is a Book Reporter Bets On selection. Love you hanging up. I'm going to share what Lisa Scottolini said about it. Phillippi Ryan is one of my favorite authors, and The House Guest proves why. This riveting novel twists and turns through the page-turning story. Events turn shocking, with revelation after revelation in a thriller that never forgets to touch the heart. And that's so true. So welcome, Hank. So nice to have you here.
I'm so delighted to be here. Thank you. And to hear you say all those kind words. And Lisa Scottolini, my darling Lisa, what a joy to have her approval and praise. It's just, I've always loved her. Mm-hmm. And I always wanted to be her, I have to tell you. And so to hear her kind words is just a dream come true. So thank you.
Yeah. And, I can't believe this is the first time that I'm interviewing you. I mean, it's like, wait, why have we not done this before? But this book, it completely captivated me. I sat there and I read it. I'm afraid to say this in like in a day and a half. And you hate to say it to an author, it took a year and more to write the book. So let's start out with you telling our listeners and viewers about The House Guest.
Well, there was this interesting thing a couple of years ago on Twitter that said, can you describe your book in 5 words? Mm-hmm. So I thought, well, I can do that. I can totally do that. And it wasn't as easy as I thought it would be. But for The House Guest, I came up with greed, divorce, betrayal, sisterhood, and revenge. Greed, divorce, betrayal, sisterhood, and revenge. So then you think, okay, I need more than that. So on Facebook, where they have more characters, they said, describe your book in 5 phrases. So, okay. So 5 phrases: a gorgeous house on Cape Cod, a shocking divorce, a sympathetic FBI agent, a new best friend, and an emerald necklace. So quickly, The House Guest stars Alyssa McCallan. Alyssa McCallan, when we meet her, is baffled and terrified because her husband, her affluent, powerful, the man she thought she loved, she knew she loved, and thought loved her, has just inexplicably and without explanation walked out on her, leaving her absolutely alone and terrified. And to make things worse, it looks like Bill McCallan is trying to ruin her life. He has left behind, he's sneaking into their house where he's not supposed to go. He's left behind these clues to let her know that he always wins, throwing one of her favorite dresses onto the floor or leaving a knife on the kitchen floor, those kinds of really insidious, scary things. He's taken all the friends. He's threatened to take the house. He's threatened to take the money and leave her with absolutely nothing. And she's terrified about this. Why does he want to ruin her life? And then when the FBI comes knocking at her door, she realizes she really needs a friend. And then she gets one, a seductive new friend, Bree Lawrence, who seems to be running from problems of her own. And the two become confidants, as women sometimes do. And then Bree offers a tantalizing suggestion. Maybe they can solve each other's problems. So it's sort of Gaslight meets Thelma and Louise meets Strangers on a Train, but not maybe in the way you would predict. So in a shocking divorce, some people get all the friends. Just the other spouse get, if they're lucky, they get the benefits. And that is The House Guest.
Oh, I love it. I love it. Oh, and that is exactly the description of what goes on. It's exactly.
Well, it's really 2 smart women,
yes, facing
off in a high-stakes psychological cat and mouse game to prove their truth about a devastating financial betrayal. But which one is the cat and which one is the mouse?
And I love that where they meet. Everything will just sets it up. We're going to get to that. So every story's got a kernel of an idea of how it started. Like something happens and you sit there and say, okay, where did it come from? What was your kernel of the idea that started the book?
Yeah, that's so wise, Carol. It's really true. There's always this one little domino that begins to fall and topples over the whole stack, and the idea the book sort of blossoms, from that. I think of it like a Rubik's Cube a little bit too, a little bit from here, a little bit from there, and you sort of click, 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 and twist and churn until you have this beautiful solved puzzle. So let me tell you where this came from. I had an acquaintance some years ago in a different part of my life who was happily married, a smart, competent, reliable, dependable, savvy woman. I mean, no dummy. And every day she'd go off to work in her smart professional job and wave goodbye to her husband, and he'd go off to his smart professional job. And this went on for years until the police arrived at their door. And it turned out that he had never gone to work at all. His entire job had been absolutely imaginary, and that he had been staying home every day and doing horrible, nefarious, illegal things, disgusting things on the computer, for which the police finally came and arrested him. And Carol, she had no idea. She had no idea what was going on. And I know she didn't. And it made me start to wonder, how well do we really know that person who's on the pillow next to us? How well do we really know the people that we think we love and who love us? Could they really be keeping a secret from us? And we think, no, we're paying attention. We would know. And I can tell you from all the research I've done, so many women have no idea. It's really terrifying. And that was really the nugget that began The House Guest.
Do you know, I was watching that show, Dear Edward, the other night, and there's a scene where that is exactly what happens to this one woman. And she finds out that the whole thing is a sham. Like, she thinks they have money. She's done all these things, and he's been trying to make her happy for years, and there's nothing. And that moment of, wait a second, how did I not know this, first of all? And what was ending up happening around me? And then, how stupid am I? I think, and that goes through those kinds of little channels of, what did I do that I had no idea that this is what was going on? So yeah, exactly. I can see catalyst for an idea being there.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting. In my research, I found this project I think it's called the White Collar Project, which is set up by a woman who had this happen to her, whose husband was accused and convicted of some nefarious, horrible white collar crime. And she had no idea. And she discovered this whole universe of women, and we'll talk about women, this whole universe of women whose husbands did something like that and just had no idea until the FBI came to the door. And what do? It's guilt by association. Right. It's the universe of all the rest of us saying, oh, come on, how did you not know? When they didn't know. And it's the same with violent crimes as well. The BTK killer, his family had no idea. The
woman married to Ted Bundy. Sorry? The woman married to Ted Bundy had no idea.
Exactly, Ted Bundy. And so I found a woman in a case in Indiana where the woman thought her husband was, a little quirky, and sometimes he was a little off, but, he was cute and fine, until one day their son came home and with a skull in his hand. Their little boy came home and said, Mommy, look what I found in the woods in the backyard. So she says to her husband, look what Jimmy found in the backyard, honey. And he says, oh yeah, that's my father's skeleton from medical school. And she didn't say to him, why are you burying your father's skeleton from medical school in the woods in the back? So finally she got angry, anxious, not angry, but anxious and suspicious. And she called the police, and they checked the backwoods, and they found thousands of human bones. Thousands. Ooh. And it turned out that eventually they suspected him of killing a dozen people while he was married, and he finally shot himself before they could charge him. But she didn't know. And so this whole idea that we live in this little bubble of what we think is right and what we think is real, and what happens when someone pops that bubble or pulls the rug out from under you, how do you get your life back?
Right.
How do you realize who you are meant to be, not in that world anymore? And that's what happens to Alyssa. I mean, we've all had broken hearts. And how do we come back from that? I mean, it's a murder mystery. It's a thriller. It's psychological suspense, but it also has, as Lisa Scottolini said, that heart about what do we do when we're heartbroken? How
Right.
do we get our lives back?
Yeah. How do you sit there when you've known this person, and he's also built her life up? Her
Mhm.
life had been here and all of a sudden is up here. And then she finds out it's all an illusion. It's all not truly really real. And how does she feel then? And what does she do about that? Well,
And go ahead.
goes
We
and gets a
understand
friend.
her. We understand her because she grew up in a very hard scrabble way, searching for coins under the couch cushions and things like that, and not having any luxuries. So when they fell in love, and he fell in love with her and she fell in love with him, it was truly a romance. And she left law school for him to become Mrs. Bill McCowan. And she loves that. That's a choice that anybody can make. That's a perfectly fine choice. To keep the home running and to do things like that. That's good. So, but when that world falls apart, she begins to realize that Bill, doesn't ever notice that why there are fresh flowers in the house all the time, or why the towels are always folded. She says once she asked him how much a carton of milk was, and he says to her, if you need milk, send someone to get it. He just doesn't understand how privileged he is, but Alyssa does. Alyssa really understands it. And she's not mercenary, but she understands that she'll miss it if it's all taken away from her.
Yeah, there's that moment where she's sitting in the club and she's looking, and everybody is looking askance at her. Everybody is they want no part of her. And she realizes how much this was her world, and her world evaporated like that. So everybody is, they were his friends. They were his contacts. She thought they liked her for her, but they really didn't. She was part of that couple. And it's so interesting to see how many people get dismissed when things like that happen, and you pick sides and you pick what's going on. It's interesting because in our town, a lot of people stay together through high school, like the kids through high school. And then you find out they split. And it was funny because I was at yoga class one day years ago, and this woman walked up. She goes, "Are you still married?" So I said, "Yes." And I said, "Why?" And she goes, "Would you like to get together? Because there's not very many people still married." And but people stay for different reasons. And then they just get to a point where we're not really happy. We need to move on. But for Bill, it's a whole other kettle of worms that he's got going on, underneath this facade of a fabulous life.
Exactly. And on the morning that he walks out, she's cooking breakfast, and he appears with his suitcase and his laptop and says, "I need a break." And Alyssa says, "A break? You think I'm some video you can put on pause? What are you talking about? Why? We were happy." And he says nothing and walks out. And imagine how devastating that would be when the equilibrium of your life is completely pulled out of balance. How do you get that back? How do you get that equilibrium back? And what decisions might you make in your vulnerable state? You'll do anything in your grief and in your sorrow and in your the feeling of bereft, that something that you thought was there is now gone. Did you do something wrong? Maybe she did. And how that can then evolve into thinking, I'm just going to make this better. I'm going to take my power and watch me now.
Yeah. And so she goes out, she's sitting in a bar, kind of drowning her sorrows. She's sitting there, and this woman comes over next to her. And women can do this instant bond thing that men don't understand. I'm sorry if there are men watching this, but you really don't understand. Yeah, you guys bond over like golf, or you bond about it. But this is, women will have a very deep conversation with somebody instantly. If you see the conversations happening on the plane where somebody tells up their whole life, usually not a guy. It's usually the women that are doing that, right? And then you walk to baggage claim and you're like, oh my gosh, you know everything. So these two women bond at the bar because this woman comes in and sits down beside her, this woman named Bree. And I feel like this is something that women can do. But I was laughing because I'm thinking, our whole lives we've been told, can you trust anyone in a bar? Can you trust, the guy you meet in the bar? Do you really trust him? So now you've got the situation where there's a woman in the bar. And I thought that was a really interesting place for them to have met and said, oh, you need help. And a woman would do this. I'm going to try and help you. She doesn't bring her to her house. She puts her in the guest house. It's like she doesn't do that complete step. So tell us about when those two meet.
First time. She doesn't do it the first time they meet.
No.
They meet, they talk briefly. Bree is very hesitant to talk with her and sort of says, never mind. And then Alyssa feels that something is really wrong with her and that she's running from something that's dangerous and she doesn't want to talk about it. And Alyssa comes back the second day, and lo and behold, Bree is there because she's staying at the hotel, and Bree is there. And that's when they talk more. And your point is so well taken that, they actually have a discussion about that. If one of us were a guy in a heterosexual relationship, if one of us were a guy and said, can I have your phone number or want to come over? You might say, well, sure, you seem like a nice guy. You might think about it. But so why can't two women do exactly the same thing?
Right. It's exactly. And then you're sitting there going, okay, could you come home with me? And, oh, I have a place you can stay. And what happens from there? Well, also the book is structured against the days of the
Plus,
week.
they also Google each other.
Yeah.
So, right. So they know who the other one is.
Yeah. They've got some handle on each other.
Yeah.
The book is structured against the days of the week. And we open on a Friday. Why did you choose to work out the story with days? Like it's finite of what's going on, kicking off on the Friday and going from there?
That is such a good question. And if I give you the real answer is I never thought about that. Okay, the magic of writing. It made sense. It made sense for a structure, because I think you want a book to have some feeling of real life, that people need to go to sleep, that there needs to be night, that there needs to be morning, that there needs to be the next day, there needs to be some reason that you're doing something or not doing something, or that you're hurrying or not hurrying, or that it's light or dark, or all kinds of things can happen. So I wanted to make, in thinking about it now, trying to really explain what I did sort of instinctively, I wanted to feel the most like the real world than there could possibly be. And I also think it gives the readers a way of organizing their thoughts about what happens and when and how long between something.
Yeah. I mean, it completely works. And I'm just there like, oh yeah, now this is Friday. Then this is the next day. And there are chapters within there as well. But you're really like, this is what happens in this day. And you're moving along with these people. That scene in the country club where she's there, she's being shunned by everyone. It's really the inside outside thing. It's such a huge level. And it's interesting how society works like that. And it was a great way to show what is happening to her briefly. Like you could just get into the scene and see her being rejected really, really quickly. Bill hasn't just rejected her. You see how she lost all the friends. And was that something you saw earlier in your writing, when you were writing her, of let's get this scene and get it right out there? And it played to her not as of Bill's life, but everybody's life. It was like she was just there. Did that come really soon, that I've got to have something where she's really, really put out there?
Again, you've gotten so to the heart of this, and you're making me really think about this, because I had looked at it initially as a way for her to feel as if she were giving Bree something. She's trying to make her new friend feel happy and secure and giving her a treat. So that was what the goal of the scene was. And then as I started writing it, I started thinking, what would it really feel like for Alyssa to walk into that country club now with every single person who used to be her friend, realizing that that Bill had dumped her, that they're all thinking, we knew you never fit, we knew you were never part of this. And as she says, as if there were some rules that I never learned, as if they knew something that I didn't know, which turns out to be true, which we won't say anything more. So sometimes there are moments in our lives that are just sort of crucibles of everything that has meaning and shows you which side you're on now. So two things about that. One, I love this scene too, so I'm really gratified that you picked up on it. She realizes she's being ostracized, that she's no longer Mrs. Bill McAllen. She's being ostracized. She's an outsider. No one will ever accept her again. And it's also the moment when we see a flash of Bree, the new friend, who suddenly rises to help Alyssa, that she's savvy enough and sympathetic, empathetic enough to realize that there are people who are really making Alyssa feel terrible. And she decides just to come right in and enter this emotional battle and win. And she wins. And it makes us love Bree a little bit too. And she even says it, this is what I do for my friends. This is what I do. my friends.
And it's showing up for your friends, being there for your friends, being on their side is such a really big deal. And sometimes when you're in a situation like that, I mean, it's even like, we're not going to put this on his tab. Oh, we can put this on his tab. Those things that will just cut you down. And you realize everybody at the club is doing it. It's not just the people, it's the workers, and it's where the power really comes from. And when you sit there and understand power, which I think when you first start working or you first start out in life, you don't understand the bands of power that end up happening in life and where those bands of power can take you and then take away from you.
Oh, absolutely. She's even, the power structure of an exclusive country club dining room. The maitre d' or the hostess of the dining room it makes her wait. Mrs.
Yes.
Bill McAllen makes her wait. That's a power move. And those kinds of power moves happen all the time. She's seated in a part of the dining room where she has to walk past everyone else who's in the room as if she's parading her by for the scorn of all the other people in the dining room. These things that people do to each other. That's why my book that's why I love psychological suspense, because sometimes the damage and destruction that we can do to each other by our emotions and our mind is just as destructive, just as devastating as a gun or a knife. You can slash someone's reputation or shatter their heart or make them feel like they're not good enough just by the wrong word, just by a raised eyebrow, just by a turned back. And that's what happens to her. And I love to use that in my novels because that's power, exactly as you say. That is power, not weaponry, but the weapons of our own mind. And I think that is so fascinating and so devastating.
Yeah, it's devastating because you realize how many people can be turned out of a situation. You even realize sometimes when people split, they both show up and everybody's like, well, which side am I going to be on? Who am I supposed to be talking to? Should I go over and say anything over there? Or does that say I'm not allegiant with over here? Like, where is very interesting.
And it's also which is better for them. If I align with Alyssa, am I better off? Or if I align with, powerful Bill who runs everything and controls all the money, which is better for me. So it's really, it's high school. It's grown up high school.
Yes, it is.
That never goes away.
It completely is. And then Alyssa finds out that the FBI's got stuff on Bill. And then all of a sudden the power shifts completely because it's back in her hands. And it's like, whoa, whoa, whoa. But how did he do this? How did I know what's going on? And she's pondering on what to do. And she's still thinking about him as her Bill. And he's changed her life for the better. And she had a chance to help bury him now. And I feel like you captured her really well on the page where she's trying to make the decision about what to do. I mean, they'll say, we'll give you money if you help us do this. We'll do this. And yet she's saying, I love this man. And you don't turn that off like this. It's not a switch that goes like that. But now I can sit there and really help them incriminate him and help them do all these things that are going to take him down. What do I do? And I think you've got her in that moment of, and it's about halfway through the book. I looked today, it's not right at the beginning. It's there where she's been in this for a while now. She's been in this thinking he's in the house. And then that's what she does. So tell us why, like there.
Yeah, I think that when someone is a good person, and Alyssa is I guess we can say this, is a good person. She's lovely and loving and honest and reliable, and she does love her husband. So how does she handle what feels like a devastating betrayal? And we don't want to give too much away, but it feels to her like a devastating betrayal. So does she stand by her man and say to the FBI, he never could have done this, which she says, that can't be true. He never could have done this. I would have known this. No, no, no. Or does she say, sure, look in the safe, look anywhere you want. I don't care. I don't know anything about this. And the FBI seems to have some information that she's involved. So where did that come from? And is she involved or is she not involved? So we don't quite know as the book progresses where Alyssa really stands in this. Does she really know? So there's a lot, it's about power. And what comes with power is loyalty, right? And what comes with marriage is loyalty. And what comes with a power shift and struggle and dynamic is loyalty. So where does marital loyalty come into a story like this, especially since the person you're supposed to be loyal to seems to have ruined your life on purpose. Do you get back at them and fight back? Do you try to understand it? What do you do? And that's the dilemma that Alyssa is in this book. What is the right thing to do? She wants to do the right thing. I mean, on one hand, if Bill is really bad and he's really devastating to other people's lives, ruin them financially and emotionally, does she want to help him get away with that?
Right.
No, or does she want justice? And so my books are all about justice. Every one of them is about moral justice, ethical justice, personal justice, legal justice, all of that. Making the world be right is sort of how I look at what a book is for. And that's what Alyssa is struggling with as well. I loved writing it. I mean,
I can tell. I can tell because it's your passion comes across in the writing. It completely comes across about how much you were really invested in the characters and invested in the story. And when you read a book and it's like that, I will tell you, I presented the book last week. We do this preview event called Bookachino Live on Wednesday afternoon, the second Wednesday of every month. And I preview books that are coming out. And at the end, we send a questionnaire to those who are there live and say, which are the books you most wanted to read? And yours is in the top 5.
Oh my golly. Well, you'll have to tell me what you said. That's fabulous to hear.
And it's just really fun to see what the reader relates to as far as a book that says, this is the one I'm going to want to read. This is the one I'm going to want to pick up. Just from a description, saying it's a bets on, just little tethers of what to bring the reader in with. And when I was reading this, there's just so many different angles that you could enjoy the book from. And I thought that was really big, especially the last sections that have these twists and turns I didn't see coming. And when you come up with something that will throw the reader, do you get typing faster and start pumping like, I've got it, I know what I'm going to do?
It's so much fun, Carol. It is so much fun. It's really a moment because I don't plan anything in my novels. I have no outline. I have no anything like that. I just had this little idea about my friend and her husband. And so I type chapter 1 and I say, okay,
Friday,
what's going to happen now?
Yeah.
And so I'm typing along, I have my good days and my bad days, like every author does. I have my good days and my bad days. So I'm typing along, but at some point, at about 7/8 of the way through, I've got to decide who's good and who's bad. And I've got to decide what's going to happen. And that is the most difficult time for me. I mean, I have said to my husband from time to time, oh, sweetheart, I think I've created a mystery that I can't solve. What am I going to do? How am I going to come up with this ending? I just don't know. Because an ending has to be believable, logical. It has to flow seamlessly from everything before it. All the loose ends have to be tied up. Every single question has to be answered. You want the reader to feel satisfied. You want them to say, that was good. That's great. Satisfying, inevitable, but surprising, all those things. So I have to figure that out. So I sit here at this very desk thinking, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? Who does this? What does someone want? How far will they go to get it? What does loyalty mean? What does love mean? What does justice mean? Who is Alyssa and what would she do? And so when I figured out the ending, and by the ending, I mean really the last 1/8 of the book, not just the last page.
Right.
Because if you read the last page, you still wouldn't know what happened before. So when I figured out how it was all going to work together, I was by myself right here and I stood up and applauded. I'm like, yeah, I got this. And then I thought, sit down, Hank, sit down. You're by yourself. Just nobody's here to see this. But when you discover, and Sue Grafton used to call it the magic, when you discover what the book really is and what it really means and what absolutely has to happen. When you talk about typing fast, I'm a terrible typist. I'm terrible. And so when I know I'm really in the zone, I'm typing so fast that when I look at it later, almost every other word is misspelled because I'm just really typing fast. And usually I know what I meant. Back in the old days of Word, and that little funny little guy would pop up, a little assistant. Once it popped up and said, there are so many spelling and grammar errors in this document that Word can no longer correct them. And I thought, yay, I'm really in the zone right now because I'm typing fast. So it's a joy. So when people say, wow, the twists and turns in The House Guest, you really surprise me. I say, yeah, wasn't that a surprise? Because I surprise myself. I surprise myself every day. And that is really what keeps me writing, is the fun of finding out what happens.
Do you ever have a place where you go and you go, I can't do that later on, I have to take it out? Like, did you ever, like, I mean, I've heard, no, that not every book just comes like these moments of, euphoric typing, because a lot of days of the head banging on the laptop and that's all what happens. But when it really, is happening like that, do you ever get yourself out on a strain and say, I've got to cut that part of the story because it can't be in there because it's just not going to work? Or are you thinking so linearly that usually doesn't happen?
Well, because I don't have an outline,
right?
I'm sort of seeing what happens every day. And when I got to the end of the house guest, of the first draft of the house guest, it was 125,000 words long. Now it can't be, but because I know that's how I write, because I know I'm going to put things in that I will want to take out later, I'm fine with that. I just let it go. I just let it go. And then I have the joy, and this might be surprising, but then I have the joy of cutting things out that don't matter, that don't mean anything, that are irrelevant, or, that might be fun to know, but you don't need to know them. I mean, they talk about, killing your darlings. And I think, those aren't my darlings. If they clog up the pacing or make you not want to turn the pages, or make you think, well, the what, or why do I need to know this? Anything that stops you from just turning the pages as fast as you can, I love to take that out. Sometimes the things that I take out are me trying to figure out what happens. You'll see like these serial questions that say, what if he did this? What if he did that? What if she did this? What if she did that? That's just me asking myself that.
Right.
And so once I figure it out, I take out all that sort of toing and froing about it. So I love cutting. I love editing. And I give myself the freedom just to write whatever I want every day, with the additional freedom of knowing that I'm just as happy to take it out later. But sometimes you can't get to point C without writing point B, and then you take out point B and boom, it all goes together gorgeous.
Yeah, you can sit there and you can get them from this side of the street to the other, but you got the street in between, and how you're going to do it.
Yeah.
So who sees the book first? Does your agent see the book first? Your editor, do they see it at the same time? What happens after you've got this big 125,000 word document?
Nobody sees it at 125,000.
Okay.
Nobody sees it. I've been a television reporter for 43 years.
Yeah, we're going to talk about that.
Craziness. And I'm used to having, in television, everybody looks at your story all the time. And one of the joys of writing fiction for me is that there is a huge period of time where just everybody stay away from me. I don't want to have anybody's opinion. I don't want to know what you think about this. I have this sort of confidence, naive confidence of knowing that I can do this. I'm going to fix this. So when I get it back down to, 95,000 words or 96,000 words, that's the first draft that my editor sees first. My editor sees it first. And we have this sort of system between my editor, Kristen Sevick, and my agent, Lisa Gallagher, both of whom are just geniuses, that Kristen sees it first, and then she gives comments. And then after her comments, then Lisa will look at it, and we see if the comments mesh. And what they each say that's contradictory is interesting, and what they each say that matches is interesting. So I love that critiquing from smart readers, because I always say to Kristen, I can't wait for this book to be Christianized.
Right.
She always has a marvelous idea. She sees things in the book that I don't see. I mean, I think that happens a lot of times, and if you're lucky, it does. And I'll say, oh yes, that's exactly what should happen. And she says, you put it there. You put it there. You just didn't see it. And that's another part of the magic.
I remember one time I was reading a manuscript from somebody, and I said, the little boy was at the hospital at some point, right? And they said, yeah. I said, he's still there because he had it. I said, he never leaves. And it was like very, very funny. And it's really, really funny. But it's, the other thing that you're talking about this book is that I love this line. You can't always get what you want, but sometimes you get what you deserve. And it really does sum up for me Alyssa's situation, because you're not going to get what you want, but he's not going to get what he wants. It's just that whole thing for every single character. You could have a group discussion and say who got what they want and who got what they deserved. You know,
I mean, you're such a genius, because that is the first line I came up with. That is what, when I thought about this story, that popped into my head. And I thought, oh yeah, that's exactly what this is about. That's exactly what this is about. So I'm so happy that you picked up on that, because that is the essence of the book.
Yeah. It's like sometimes you get what you deserve. Sometimes you get what you want. So the storyline hits a wall. Like, okay, you're sitting there and it's one of those days where no words are coming. No words are coming. How do you get yourself out of the woods? Like, how do you do that? What do you do to get yourself out of the woods?
Well, one of the things I learned in television is that, you just have to do it. Some days it's easy and some days it is impossible, but nevertheless, you can't say, I'm not going to do this today. I don't feel like it. I mean, if I said to my news director, can I be on the 6 o'clock news at 10 after 6? Because I'm not feeling it today. How long would I have lasted? So I just say, I'm going to write 1,000 words a day, I hope. And if they're bad, they're just bad, because I can fix it later. It's fine, but it's all to advance the story every day. And some days that 1,000 words takes 20 minutes, like, because I'm zooming. Sometimes I just sit here like, oh, no, she, no. But what I do is know that I have to write something. I let myself be bad. And the other thing, that practical thing that I do, is I say, what does the main character want in this scene? What do they want, and why, and what will they do to get it? So I know what they want. Then I explore their motivation. Then I explore their decision-making process of what to do to get it. Then they take some action. They have to take some action to do whatever it is. And then, because it's suspense, a thriller, somebody stops them. There's an obstacle. So they're after something, they do it. There's an obstacle, then they have to want something again. They have to start again and say, now I want this. And that is my basic, sort of 5-step process for action, for keeping the action moving ahead. And when I teach this all the time. So when I'm stuck, I say, just take your own class, sister. Listen to what you tell your students and do that. And that can really, sometimes that really crystallizes it for me.
If you find you're okay, so you're stuck, well, you're trying to get them from, let's say, Tuesday to Wednesday or something like that. And this is your day, you're writing your 1,000 words, but you've got a great idea for later on. There's an idea for the house at the beach house. There's an idea for this. Will you give yourself the freedom to write that instead?
I don't. I just keep going in the story. I have a notebook. I'll show you. I have a notebook. It's very, very high tech. This notebook next to me as I'm writing my books. And
what is the question? Yeah, you can see it. Yeah.
And I ask myself these questions, and I'll say, and I have a big page that says fix.
I love it.
And so I take notes for myself. So if I have the idea for the scene on the Cape Cod house, or the scene in the car, or the scene with the flowers, I'll write it down and I'll remember it. But I do it in linear order, because everything in a book has to happen because of something. It happens because of something. So I would have to rebraid the story to get to that scene. So it may be that when I get to the time that scene should be, it wouldn't be exactly like that. Maybe the relationships have changed. Maybe the day has changed. Maybe the weather has changed. Maybe the motivations have changed. So I tuck it in my head, and I tuck it in my handy dandy notebook, but I still do it linearly.
So, okay, you're also this award-winning journalist. That means lots of Emmys, folks. She's won lots. And you've been in it for 43 years, which always surprises me that you don't have been doing anything for 43 years. And I hear that you're now just doing special projects. What are the similarities between being a reporter and writing novels besides deadlines? I mean, I always love that. I've heard the line that you can't be I have block, like I have writer's block, because a plumber doesn't have plumber's block. And Linwood Barclay's got this great line about it. Like, how can you have writer's block? You just do this every day. This is what your job is. You have to sit down and do this, because teachers don't go, oh, I think I'm blocked today, I'm not going to go in. So what are the similarities between being a reporter, writing on deadline, and writing novels?
Well, it's the best experience I ever could have gotten, being a reporter for all these years. I should tilt my screen up and show you. Hold on, I don't do this for everyone.
Okay.
But here is.
Yeah, I know. The wall of, I mean, it's amazing. It's amazing.
Well, you know, I've worked for a long time for those, but you know what? Here's what, and this is to answer your question, because every one of those Emmys represents a secret that someone didn't want me to tell. Secret that I got to dig out and reveal. So think about how similar that is to writing a novel of suspense. It's exactly the same thing. A suspense novel is all about secrets, and it's all about storytelling. So writing an investigative story and writing a suspense novel is incredibly similar, because you have a character who you care about and a problem that needs to be solved. You're tracking down clues, you're following leads. You hope the good guys win and the bad guys get what's coming to them. And in the end, you want some justice and you want to change the world a little bit, right? So in writing an investigative story, that's exactly the same as writing a fictional novel of suspense, except I need to make stuff up in writing my fiction. And that was what I was worried about the most, was after all these years of only telling the truth, would I be able to create a new world out of just my imagination? And it was just, it's just a joy to sit here and look out at the maple tree and make the world of Alyssa and Bree and Des and Hattie Parker, the FBI agent, and Bill McKellen. But, television, writing a story for television and writing a fictional story, I don't want you to turn the channel when my stories are on TV.
Right.
And I don't want you to put my book down when you're reading it. So it has to be new, it has to be unique, it has to be compelling, it has to be entertaining. Absolutely. I mean, I write absolutely because I want you to miss your stop on the subway. Right. Is what I'm going for, because you just can't stop reading. And it's exactly the same as writing for television. So couldn't have had better training.
And it's the discipline of doing it, the discipline of getting it done. Investigative work meant broadcast pieces with a definite beginning, middle, and end. Yes. I've heard you talk about that, because it's also got to have an arc. You can't tell people how it's going to end at the beginning. You've got to captivate them, reel them in of, this is this crime. I'm wearing a wire. This is what I went in and did. This is what I found out. And for that kind of a thing, it is that definitive middle and end. But the shooting a story is different than writing one, because you've got to show all those details. Or
I probably shoot 20 hours of video for maybe a 3-minute story. And I'm realizing what's important in the story. I'm realizing what my very best video is. And then I weave that together to be the most riveting, compelling, propulsive story that it could possibly be. And that's exactly the same. That's exactly the same as writing fiction. I mean, I took out 25,000 words. Right. That's the video I didn't use. And it's that same storytelling training that goes into both jobs.
I used to do documentaries when I was working at the magazine years ago, and there was one shoot I didn't go on. And so they were showing me the rough cut, and I'm looking and I said, you've got it. And they go, no, we think, I said, trust me, you were there. So you know what else happened that you think needs to be there. I wasn't there. And I'm telling you, you already conveyed it. And sometimes the editor, like you're talking about with your editor, needs to be that step back and say, you've got it. You don't need to say it again. Take out these 3 things because you said it, or say you didn't say it. You need to put something in there. You need that segue into the next thing. And it was fascinating when you do, because it was the years that you were on the Avid. I mean, it was much harder than it is now. And you were sitting looking at all this footage going, how are we going to tell a story? And we'd go out and do documentaries about young women in their 20s. And it was interesting to see how much I remember those women even now and what they did, because we did that thing of weaving together the stories of their lives. And it's exactly what you're doing here, is you're putting together in a book that same weaving together of what goes on, but making it also visual enough for the reader, who at the end should probably be able to draw a picture of who this woman is, because
To
you've given
them,
enough clues.
absolutely so. I mean, one of the things that I love when readers say to me the most is I could just see it. I could just see the movie in my mind of your book. And I think, yes, that's my total goal, to
When
make
they
it
go to the
so
beach.
cinematic and so visual
Yeah.
that you can just picture it. Absolutely.
And you have worn a wire to get a story, haven't you? You have done that?
Many times. Absolutely. I've wired myself with hidden cameras. I've gone undercover and in disguise and chased down criminals and confronted corrupt politicians. I mean, all of that experience goes into these novels, certainly.
Yeah.
I mean, my books are not my television stories made into fiction in any way, but that experience, the emotion, I know what people look like when they're lying. I know how people try to be persuasive. I learned all those tricks in my years as a reporter, talking to all kinds of people and being in crazy circumstances, from, murder scenes and SWAT teams and hurricanes and tornadoes and every single conceivable thing like that goes into my experience. I didn't start writing till I was 55.
Wow.
And people say, oh, I wish you would have started sooner. And I think I wasn't the person I am. I wasn't the person I was. I wouldn't have been capable of writing the way I write now if I had tried to do it sooner. It all works out at the time it's supposed to be. I'm a real believer in that.
Yeah, that's exactly. It's also, were you ever afraid when you were tracking down a piece? Like, were you ever afraid of what was going on? So you understand the fear that could go into somebody who's in these situations?
Sure. I mean, as personal fear to me, that as a television reporter, I always have a photographer with me. I generally have a photographer with me. And so I always have said to them, if it looks like somebody's going to haul off and punch me, just make sure you're rolling so we can at least get it on video, And so my colleagues who work overseas, those are the people who are really in danger. And I do know that there are reporters in danger in the United States all the time. We see it way too much, and terrifyingly so. So there's always that little veneer of fear of, for me, going into some place where I know I'm not wanted, or if they knew that I was a reporter, they would not be happy. I've had incidents in a cult church and with the fish purveyor and those kinds of things where my knees were a little bit weak. The time they discovered my hidden camera, that's never fun. Or the time when the bad guy pushed me down, I mean, literally pushed me down. But as I said, my photographer was rolling, so we got the whole thing.
You got the whole thing. I got me being knocked on the ground. Richard Engel from NBC was in somewhere the other day. I think it was in Russia or Ukraine. He was in the Ukraine. And he was in this house where people were piled into the house. And the women insisted that he sit down and have dinner. And they're pouring him soup. And he goes, they have nothing. I don't want you to do this. And they insisted on doing that. And you realize that vignette being shot was bigger than anything you could have taken all day long. And it's sometimes those surreptitious moments, which are the same surreptitious things that end up in the book, are the moments that make the story more real and make you sit there and say, like, she's up at the beach house. And I think that's really where I saw it. And she's up there and she's like, wait, I'm going to lose this too. Like, this is like the lobsters are going, like everything's out of here, So
that's great. I mean, Richard Engel is a genius, and that is such a poignant moment and there's a moment when Alyssa realizes in their bedroom in the Cape House that she's never been in that bed alone.
Yes.
She's only been there with Bill. And the question is, will she pick up his ship model and throw it out the window because she's so mad? So, but then she realizes that the lawyers would come after her if she did. So all throughout, there's this conflict from the biggest, that she's losing her entire being and existence, to the tiniest, I'll miss these cloth napkins, I'll miss this Audubon print, I'll miss the smell of Nantucket Sound, the briny fragrance of Nantucket Sound, and the seabirds on the beach, and the beach roses. All this is being taken away from me, and I don't know why.
And I have no understanding of what's going to happen. Now you're only working on special assignments. Is that to give you more time for writing?
Yes. I mean, at this point in my life, I'll tell you, because it's just us, right? I sort of decided to declare victory in television.
Yeah.
I mean, I love it. I adore it. And if there's a great story, if we find a great story, I'm delighted to do it. But my focus so much now is on this absolutely wonderful writing career. I have this one life. And I worked very hard in television for all these years. And now I'm really delighted to be totally focused on writing this book and talking about this book and writing my next book and planning the books after that. I woke up this morning and I thought, I have an idea. I have an idea. And that's just propelling me through this entire day. So I'm really lucky to be in this second part of my life and career. It's just an unexpected delight.
They've moved your publication time. You didn't used to come out in February. Am I right or am I wrong?
No, I used to come out in August, September.
Exactly. Okay. So when I saw this in February, I said, this is something different for you as well. And sometimes when that makes that change, it's readers are approaching your books differently as well. It's not last week at the shore. It's not last week at the beach. It's in February. And I think it sort of changes your career trajectory a little bit as well, just because of that. Think about it.
Crossing, who knows? Who knows? I mean, the powers that be decided this was the time, and I was 100% thrilled about that. And it's turned out to be amazing. The reception that the house guest is getting is beyond anything I ever could have imagined. So I'm really thrilled. Plus, I'm going to make a T-shirt that says "Bets On." I think I will wear that everywhere. That is such an honor. Thank you.
That's on. Yeah, no, and really, I finish books. Sometimes I say it's not a bets on, because I don't think it's going to appeal to our audience in quite the right way. I'm always thinking about, I may love the book, but that doesn't do it. It's got to appeal to the book reporter audience. It's got to be something that I love, but I also think that people are going to enjoy. It can't be a character who's too young, who's too Gen Z, because it's not going to be relatable to a large group of people. It's perfect for me talking to just those readers, but it's not going to be perfect to talk about the core of the readers. And I can talk about those books in different ways. And it's a mind game that goes into it a lot. But at the end of the year, when I have them stacked up, I don't have a goal of how many to have. Some years it's more, some years it's less. But when I look back, if I can sit, and I did a video in December and talk about all those books, that's what's key. If I can.
How long have you been doing this?
We're trying to remember whether it's 2008 or 2010, that long. And I'll just sit there and say, it was like after we started the company. And then one day I said, you know what? I think I can do this. And it's not all going to be the biggest bestseller. It's not going to be the book that's like everyone has anointed. It's going to be the book that I love and I think, should go in this direction. And I think that's absolutely what I, love about doing this.
And when you have that pile at the end of the year, and if you remember everything about those books, that shows they really stuck with you.
They really, really stuck with me. And I sat there and I did this whole video. And one of my neighbors came over for dinner over Christmas. She goes, I can't believe you remembered what all those books are about. I forget the books like immediately of like, what's going on. And I said, no, because these are the ones that stuck with me. And it was for a reason. And sure, I may, pick Jodi Picoult's Mad Honey, but it's for a reason that I ended up picking that book. And it's the same thing. I wrote in the Reading Group Guys newsletter the other day that I sit down and actually think about, will this book work for a book group? What can we discuss it? What are their topics to take away? What can we do with this book? And sometimes it's not the books that everybody loves that we have a great discussion about. And sometimes we're going to get into this in a second, the audio is not as strong as the listener wanted it to be. So they had a very different experience. I'm in a book group with a number of women in their 40s, and they, 1/3 will listen. And in the listening, they may not like the narrator. They may not like how the story is presented. So they have a very different than those who read it in an ebook. And if you're reading in dual timelines, it's very hard to read in audio, whereas it's easier to read in print. And you learn these things as you go through listening. But for you, when you talk about walking away from a career, there's another thing that I think people have to think about is you're promoting your paperback and then the hardcover and thinking about your next book. You're really doing 3 books plus the arc of your career and what's going on. And I think that it becomes this crazy full-time job, because even if you're not doing something with this, it's wait, the paperback's coming out. Are we going to keep the same cover? Are we changing in the copy?
And not to mention the promotion, and not to mention the writing of the next book. So I got today, I got my editorial letter from the darling Kristen today. I mean, like 2 hours ago, I got my editorial letter for my next book. And I'm reading her comments. I mean, she's saying things like amazing and wonderful. So that was reassuring. But I'm thinking, who are these people? I only care about Alyssa and Des and Bree right now. And here I'm reading about Arden and Cordelia and Monel. And I think, who? Yeah. And so I think I'll wait for a week, Kristen, and look at this in a little while, because I'm, again, exactly as you say, Carol, I'm focused on the house guest right now, but there's a lot to do. It's so much fun. I'm touring the country now.
Right. But the other book already being done is huge. The other book that you even have those notes. Linwood Barclay's got this great one. He says, when you get notes, it's like the doctor's report. Did I live or die? Is the book going to live or die? Like, what's going to end up happening? I love that line. Love that line. So you're so supportive of the author community, hugely supportive, probably one of the most supportive people that I know. You're frequently interviewing others. And if you've never heard Hank do an interview, everybody, you definitely want to do this. Tell our viewers and listeners more of where they can catch up you on your regularly scheduled programs, which are Crime Time and First Chapter Fun, that you do besides going out and talking about your own books.
Well, this all started during the pandemic because suddenly we were just ripped apart from each other. We never got to see each other anywhere. There were no conventions, there were no bookstores, there were no libraries where we could meet. So we wanted to come up with ways to keep our community together, to keep us talking about books and discovering new books like you've been doing since 2010 or 2008 or whenever it was, exactly what you're doing. We have Hannah Mary McKinnon, my darling partner in fictional crime in Canada, came up with the idea of First Chapter Fun, where she would read the first chapter of a new book every day at the beginning of the pandemic. And after a while, I think it was after about 50 days, she decided she wanted to stop. So I said, no, you can't stop. So I said, I'll do this with you. So now we're partners. Every Tuesday at 12:30 p.m. ET on Facebook and Instagram on First Chapter Fun, we read the first chapter of a new book out loud. And we have done everybody's first chapter. It's amazing. We're up to episode 325.
Wow.
Right? We've read 325 first chapters. So every Tuesday and Thursday every Tuesday at 12:30 p.m. ET on Instagram and on Facebook. And they're all archived. So you can read you can hear 325 first chapters. We tell about the book, we tell about the author, we read the first chapter. It's wonderful. It's absolutely wonderful. Plus, parenthetically, I'm now the world's biggest expert on first chapters. What makes a good first chapter, right? Because I've read a lot of them. And also, I do Crime Time, which is part of a mighty blaze. Crime Time is a weekly at 4 p.m. ET every Tuesday. I do an interview, 45-minute interview and Q&A, live interview with an author on Facebook on Crime Time on a mighty blaze. And that has absolutely been terrific. We've had Lisa Jewell and Lisa Scottolini and Iris Yamashita, and everybody that you could possibly imagine has come. We just had Jordan Harper and Harriet Tice. I mean, wonderful books, wonderful authors, so generous of them to come and chat with us. And both of those are incredibly popular. Plus the back room with my co-host Karen Dion. Twice a month, we have a panel of 4 authors in the breakout room style on Zoom. And next, for instance, I can tell you that it's all taped too, February 19th, I'll be in the back room, not as the host, but on a panel with B.A. Paris and Tracy Clark and Greg Hurwitz and me. So that will be.
Oh, I've got to tune into that. I've got to tune into that one. That sounds great.
Oh, I hope you do. It's fun. So we do 2 a month, and all of it is in service of the writing community and of buoying other authors to discover a new favorite author, to discover a new favorite book, to get back to chat with someone that you love, one of your already favorite authors. It's really a joy to make that connection. And I'm secretly delighted that I get to meet and talk to everyone. It's just a dream come true. Well, you know this.
Yeah,
this
it
is what you do.
It's so totally fun. And then you're moderating the panel for February Forge for your publisher on February 23rd. You're so sharp as a moderator. I mean, those people are going to be so lucky. I know every time you did an interview with Thriller-Fest, I was the first one. I'm like, I'm going to that one. And you go because of who the interviewer is going to be, because if it's not good, it's not fun. It's just, not there. And also reading those first chapters, I think is really interesting, because hearing a book is very, very different than reading the book. And it's the right narrator, the right story being told. And I just have to go back to one thing, though. Years ago, I remember hearing that when you read a book, you always read the last page first. Now, are you still doing that?
Don't do this, folks. Don't do this with my book. Okay, please don't do it. I do it sometimes, and I'll tell you why. I did a TEDx talk about this very thing. Because as a writer, I'll read the first chapter of the book, then I'll sort of read the last whole chapter. And then I go back and start at the beginning again. And I know what's going to happen. So it takes away the suspense of, oh my golly, I'm going to read this as fast as I possibly can. So, because I know. And then I start from the beginning and read from the beginning, and I can deconstruct how the author is getting to the end, what clues they're putting down that you might miss if you don't know what's going to happen. The themes emerge more beautifully. All that hard work that the author does in putting together the puzzle pieces at the beginning that we as readers don't even know are puzzle pieces, right, are revealed to me because I already know the ending. So I would not suggest that anybody who's not a writer or not an author do this. It will ruin the book. It will.
Well, I tell you, I went and read the last page of yours. I went and read the page, and I realized I wasn't going to get anything because as a result, are you very careful about what you put as the last page of your own books?
Yes. Because you may know a moment, you may know that last frame of video, but you have no idea how you got there. So that's why you have to read the whole thing from the beginning.
And I was reading yours and I was like, I'm not going to get any clues from this one. So was The House Guest always the title? Was that the title or the working title?
No, that is a great question. It is, you know your stuff. This was not always the first title. This was not always the title. The first title was Her New Best Friend. Her New Best Friend, which I thought was a great title. And we went through about half of the book with the title being Her New Best Friend. But the reason they changed it, and let me see if it's here. My previous book, the one that came out last year, Her Perfect Life.
Right.
So if we had Her Perfect Life and then Her New Best Friend, it sort of sounds like a sequel in some way of thinking. Her Perfect Life and then Her New Best Friend, it sounds like the same person. So we had to come up with a new title, and we went through maybe, I would conservatively say 50 million titles that we went through, and we came down to either The Guest House or The House Guest, The Guest House or The House Guest. And you see how different those are. Those are completely different novels. And because it was about the person and not the place, we went with The House Guest, and that has just turned out to be fantastic.
It's been fantastic. The other one with her, people confuse titles. So they may go pick up the wrong book in the store, even though it's hardcover, paperback, blah, 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 simply because they don't remember it's her. Oh yeah, that's that. Wait, which one was it then? I don't know. So it's almost like you have to think more, how clever is the reader going to be, or how smart are they going to be? And you have to assume not. You have to assume as much as they're smart reading the book.
You look at it the other way. You want to make it as easy as possible to find the new book.
As easy as possible. So now let's talk about the cover, because it's got this air of mystery. I saw you with the sunglasses on the other day. Was this the first cover you saw, or where did the cover come in?
Yes, I think this particular time, I'm sort of thinking back, we went back and forth with what color it should be. Should this be yellow? Sometimes it was yellow, and sometimes the title was red, and we went sort of back and forth with the colorways of it. But when you see the reflection in her eyes and that knowing twist, that's somebody who has some attitude and who wants something. I just think it was brilliant from moment one. Ploy Serapont and Katie Klimowitz and Forge's art department just did this genius, seductive cover. So I really love it. And I adore that the people on Instagram are dressing up like the cover. It's just wonderful to see.
I saw that last week. A couple of your other friends are just sitting there and they have the exact right glasses.
And now readers are doing it. I did a whole reel on Instagram of readers who are dressing up like whoever this is on the cover.
Yeah, it's like so much fun. I do love that there's red, so I switched my red sweater today. I do love my color turquoises on the spine.
Isn't this genius to have the turquoise spine?
Yes.
I mean, it's so unexpected, and the back is so beautiful, and the spot gloss.
How do I do this backwards? I'm like, there you go. Up on my shelf right behind me. There we go.
Oh, wonderful.
So you're doing live events, lots of them. Oh, wait. I want to talk about the audio rather. It's narrated by Stephanie Willig. What drew you? You picked her, you selected her, and I bet you've got an ear for this, because A, you've read a lot of first chapters, and B, it's also from your broadcast background. So Stephanie, how does she work?
They send me blind, anonymized auditions. So I don't know who it is. And I just put in my little earbuds and sit and listen and see if I'm transported into the story. And Stephanie just nailed it. She just got it right away. And I love the quality of her voice. I had wanted it to be sort of matter of fact, not like Hank Phillippi Ryan. I don't want it to be super dramatic. It's a business-like, grown-up, relatable woman who is savvy and knowledgeable, and just is a little bit heartbroken at this moment. And she really captured it. Very, very interesting. And listen to this: when we had a big conversation about the book, and I was talking to her about the attitude and the speed of reading and the not to make it super dramatic, and she was telling me that she had also read a book, read meaning acted out, read for an audiobook called Bitcoin Millionaire. Bitcoin Widow. I think I have it right here. Bitcoin Widow, about a woman who married a guy who had a Bitcoin fortune, and then he died, and she found out that it was all made up. So just like very analogous to this book, not exactly like, but that same thing, proving how much wives don't know about what their husbands are doing. So it was meant to be, absolutely, that Stephanie read this. Quickly, I'll say it's difficult to choose an audio narrator because for a year, I've heard the book in my head, in my voice. And so now suddenly someone else is saying it. And so it takes a bit to sort of erase my own audio and put in Stephanie's audio, but it's phenomenal. I put a snippet on Facebook. I put some video with the audio, and you can really hear how perfect it is. I'm really delighted with it. Macmillan Audio did a great job.
So here's a question. We're going to put it at the end of the podcast. We actually put a clip, so everybody who's listening on podcast will be able to hear it. The other thing I've got a question is, do you ever read your book aloud to yourself to see what word repetition? Because audio, I joke that it used to be like your rights to Finland. It didn't really matter that much. It wasn't that huge. And now it's such a huge part of the publishing process that, do you hear like, wait, I used that word twice? Or
100%. I do it all the time. I do it two ways. One, I read it out loud to myself. And you have to do it out loud. You can't just say, you have to say out loud, because you hear repetition, as you say, you hear unintentional rhyme, you hear all kinds of things that are awkward. You hear when you say said too many times or not enough times if you're confused about who's talking. I also use the weird audio guy reader that said the read aloud function on my computer. And it's a computer voice that will read it out loud. And I've gotten used to how odd the sound of the voice is. And it is the best proofreading tool you could ever imagine. It's proofreading and editing at the same time. You're hearing the book out loud. So I really love that. It's fast. So I've now started to use that in editing as well. So the audio is so enormous, so amazing. The audio book, Stephanie Willig reading The House Guest, is doing so well. It's quite shockingly successful, I have to say. So I'm happy about that in every way.
See, not rights to Finland anymore. See, there we go. So you're also out doing live events at this time, not just virtual like this one. What's it been like going back out in person after 3 years of really not doing this? It's really coming down. It's the third year of now we're going out again.
Yeah, I'm just back from my first week on the road and about to do 2 more weeks, even more on the road, with a lot of flying and a lot of events. Honestly, it's a combination of absolute joy and delight and sheer terror, so I can't say I'm delighted. I love it. My events have been standing room only. Is that a good thing or a bad thing?
That's a great thing. Yeah.
It is a great thing, but on the other hand, what are people doing to stay healthy? And is everybody okay? And is this going to be safe? So I am thrilled. I cannot wait to see everyone. I've been at Foxtail Books and Fiction Addiction and Brookline Booksmith so far, and I'm on to do many other bookstores and many other venues and programs. But it's different. It's different to be out there. Yeah. I call it the magical mystery tour. I pull my little roller bag down the concourse at the airport, and I just think I'm the luckiest person in the world. It's just great.
It's really, really true. It really is. So you've got this manuscript that you're going to get to, Kristen, in about a week. So you have the next thing. Now, when you are editing that, like, what's your timeline like? Are you starting the next book, or are you, okay, so that book is the one that you're editing at this point. Do you start something else while you're editing, just because the timeline of a book a year, like, really rolls?
Yes. Well, that's why I was so happy to awaken this morning with an idea.
I have another book. This is good.
I hope so. I think it can work. But I will finish the edits of the it's called One Wrong Word, next year's book. One Wrong Word. You heard it here first. One Wrong Word.
That works. That works.
And I'll finish that while my brain sort of cultivates the next book. And as soon as I get the first line in my head for the next book, then I know I'm underway. Often that's what really starts my books, is getting that first line. And when I hear the first line in my head, I say, okay, go. So the next thing I'm waiting for is the first line of the next book. And that'll mean it's all going to work, crossing fingers.
Did this book, is this the first line, the same line that you started out with?
Yes.
So it's Alyssa swirled the icy olives in her martini, thinking about division. She stared through her chilled glass to the mirrored shelves of the multicolored bottles in front of her at the hotel bar. Division, as in divorce. Great line, folks. Great line. Interesting to hear how you work. Oh my gosh, this has been so much fun. I can't believe we took this long to have a conversation like this. I appreciate your time. I appreciate through the years, it's been always so much fun to attend any panel that you've done, because it's complete professional. And it's so nice to work with somebody who is such a pro like you are, because you put a lot of thought into what's going to go on.
Well, Carol, I absolutely love it. When I interview people just like you, I really care about the answers. I'm really interested in it. I honestly want to know. And it's just such a delight to hear how other authors think. And you are just the queen of us all. You're just such a rock star. I am so incredibly grateful.
It's so much fun. And it's so much fun that with the way we've cultivated different things. I mean, Bookachino Live, I just want you to know, a lot of people have long meetings to try. It took us 20 minutes to come up with this. And we didn't tape the first one in July of 2020 because we didn't know what we were really doing. And everybody said, can we have the tape? And we've grown the audience for evening events. We've grown the audience for everything that we do. But it's not like we've got some giant plan that we have 35 hours of meetings on. It'll usually be, what we should do next time? Let's do it this way. And that's basically all it is. And
a good idea is a good idea. When you know it, you get those little goosebumps and you think, this is going to work. And it's me also. I always say to the staff all day long, is this a good idea or a bad idea? Tell me if it's a bad idea. You'll tell me if it's a bad idea. And I'd much rather know than be in that position where Bill was, where everybody thinks that he knows what he's doing. I don't want to be the Bill. That's not me. I don't want to be the Bill. I want to be the That's your quote. That's your quote from the interview. I don't want to be the Bill. I don't want to be the Bill. I don't want to be the Bill. Thank you so much. I look forward to seeing you in person somewhere along the way. We don't know where travels will take us. Thank you endlessly. I absolutely loved it. And to our readers, look forward to seeing you or having you listen to us next time on Book Reporter Talks To. Thanks for joining us today.